father in the train, impatiently waiting for her stop. She hated being late. Annie was 12 years old and going into 7th grade. Math was her best subject, and she loved to draw.
She lived with her mom, dad, and brother when he was home from school.
The thing Annie loved above all was baseball.
She loved Wrigley Field.
Most of all, Annie loved the Cubs.
She loved the Cubs.
She had a baseball set by Sammy Sosa.
W flag hung over her bed.
She had an instinctive dislike for goats.
For 6 weeks, Annie was 4, she had refused to wear socks.
And this year, she was going to go to every Cubs home game.
There she was on the corner of Addison and Sheffield.
Annie tucked her Cubs pencil behind her ear,
Adjusted her hat,
got out her ticket.
turned to the statue of Ernie Banks and blew a kiss.
It was her good luck charm.
Sometimes it worked.
Sometimes it didn't.
Opening day. She had missed opening day in 5 years, and she was not about to start now.
Annie was willing to argue that her seat was the best seat in the whole ballpark.
She knew her family was lucky to have the season tickets for section 114, row 2, seats 102 and 101.
Her family had seen the history. They were part of it.
Annie's great-great-grandmother.
Sylvie Stewart had sold gum outside the Cubs ballpark in the 1907 and 1908 season.
Sylvie had so many stories.
She told her son,
Who had told his son,
who had told his son.
who had told Annie these stories all her life.
Annie's baby grandmother would be out playing gum as soon as the crowd would start to form. She would walk around with her cousin's couch. It was filled with pennies, nickels, gum, jacks, and other things that might come in handy.
Out of all the stories, Annie's favorite was the one about the lost shoelace.
It was game 5 of the 1908 World Series.
A little afternoon, and an unusually hot and sunny day for October.
On most days, she would walk around to the back of the stadium. Someone always left the door or a gate open, and so we'd sneak in, see a handful of peanuts, and scamper right back out. This day, however, Sylvie continued to walk after she grabbed some peanuts. People were distracted watching the game. Sylvie let her curiosity get the best of her and wandered down a hallway marked staff. She approached a door at the end that had the word manager written in gold paint. She slowly reached out her hand and opened the door. She stepped in and closed it behind her. The office was beautiful.
Suddenly she heard voices and someone rattling the handle.
She quickly dove under her desk and held her breath. She heard 2 men talking loudly. One of them, the pitcher, had lost his shoelace and insisted the other team must have stolen it. The other man said we promised to find you a new one soon.
Sylvie hated the idea of being caught, but she knew if the Cubs lost,
Her gum business would fly right out of the window.
She searched her trusty pouch. It was filled with gum, pennies, a jack, a bobby pin, and a piece of string. Without a word, she slowly slipped out from under the desk and with her hand stretched out, offered up the string. The manager and pitcher looked first, very confused but quickly relieved. They picked up the shoe and shooed Sylvie away.
Without so much as a thank you.
the Cubs lost that game. But why don't we win the series?
In no small part thanks to Sylvie Stewart.
Maybe over all those years the story had gotten a little exaggerated.
But Annie liked to think not too much.
She came to as many games as she could.
Sometimes they won. Sometimes they lost.
Sometimes there were rain delays.
Sometimes the Seagulls swooped in a little early, but she loved being there no matter what. Annie could leave the nachos. The pretzels were never her favorite.
But the hot dogs were...
Well, they're gross, but she loved them anyway.
Oh, cotton candy and peanuts, kettle corn. She would eat one or the other most games.
Sometimes all of them.
The Cubs lost the first game of the main season, but by the end of May they had hit a winning streak.
They had won 10 of the last 15 games.
Bird came up to bat. Oh, foul ball.
That was a ball! Bird squared off his shoulders and looked the pitcher right in the eye.
Line drive. Bird made it to first.
Next up was Pena. The pitcher wound up, pulled back and third.
Oh. An outfielder caught it, but the Cubbies were ahead and won the game 8-5.
Annie left feeling like she was on a cloud that day.
Frank Lewis was Sylvie Stewart's son.
As the story goes.
Frank Lewis worked at the Monada Building downtown.
Great-grandma
will wait the extra 5 or 15
or 30 minutes.
just so we can talk to her.
After about a month,
Great Grandma Baby got so fed up with Frank that she stopped the elevator between floors, turned to Frank, and demanded that Frank ask her out. Surprised but mainly relieved, Frank did just that.
their first date was going to a Cubs game.
Great Grandpa Frank and Great Grandma Betty fell in love, got married.
Section 114, Seas 102 and 101.
Were the tickets that Great Grandma Betty got Great Grandpa Frank for their
She's
first
supposed to be sitting
anniversary.
next to her.
For the first few innings of that game, Frank had stood up. He wandered around to go get a hot dog, and he realized that every time he wanted, the other team was score a point.
Frank was not by nature a superstitious man.
But he decided not to tempt fate.
So he sat down in his seat and did not move.
The game went 12 innings.
The Cubs had lost the World Series. And Great Grandpa Frank had already decided to buy season tickets.
Frank was not an irrational person.
But the evidence was there.
He needed to be in those seats.
For section 114, row 2.
Seats 102 and 101. It didn't always pan out.
But Frank believed that having Lewis in those seats helped.
It was July, and the Elker Annie Stadium was packed.
It was 105 outside, but wasn't much better on the train. The Cubs were tied for first place in the division.
It was the last game before the All-Star break, and if they won, they'd pull ahead. The train bumped along.
Annie was swept into the platform, down the stairs, back to the corner of Addison and Sheffield.
She wormed her way out of the crowd and stood against a lamppost.
Across the street were stalls filled to the brim with overpriced souvenirs.
There were people selling peanuts for much less than inside the ballpark.
Near the entrance, there was a little boy wearing a tiny Cubs hat, sitting on his dad's shoulders. Annie smiled.
She remembered doing the same thing. There were a few people here and there not in Cubs gear.
But if she unfocused her eyes slightly, she was plunged into a sea of
Blue and white and red.
By the time the 7th inning stretch had come around, most of the people had left.
Fukujoma had managed to twist his ankle in the 4th inning trying to steal 3rd.
And Marmo had hit 2 batters in a row.
Soriano had tied up the game, 4-4, but the mood felt heavy as Take Me Up as the ball game started.
Annie loved that song.
The game went into overtime.
But the Cubs managed to eke out a win,
Annie had seen to the bitter end, like she always did.
like she always would.
Grandpa James was the first real superfan in the family.
Annie's grandfather was a bleacher bum in the 1960s.
While his parents or brothers sat in the shade.
He would roast out in the sun. If it rained, he got wet. If the wind picked up, he would freeze. If the seagulls came in early, well, around 1965 rolled around, he had caught 7 home run balls.
Grandpa James had always been a little mad that Great Grandpa Frank had not been in the right World Series game in 1945.
If he had just gone to Game 4 and not Game 6, James knew his father would have done something. He would do anything to break the curse of the girl he had hatched the man the year before.
His family and friends noticed in April when he started growing his hair out, but they didn't say anything.
His mother had noticed when her beaver coat had gone missing. She assumed she must have sent it to the cleaners and forgot.
When he started growing a goatee, his parents knew there was something going on, but they couldn't for the life of them figure out what.
The first game in August, James hatched his plan in motion. Dressed in the beaver coat, his tail's many fingers, as goatee as glorious as would ever be. He jumped over the bleachers and began to baa!
He was tackled and thrown out.
But got a standing ovation from the crowd. He was not allowed back in for the rest of the season, but the team appreciated his effort.
Whenever asked,
He would say that the sun and elements had messed with the brain and not been in his right mind.
After that incident, however,
He learned to appreciate being under and overhang and kept him out of the sun and without the seagulls.
finally it was time for the last game of the main season.
if they had won this one, they would go into the postseason.
Annie got off the train one last time.
Walked to Addison and Sheffield and toward the end.
Just before she rounded a corner, she turned to the statue of Ernie Banks with one last kiss.
Sometimes words.
Annie walked towards her seat. Took out her pencil, now worn down to a nub, got out her scorecard, and looked out over the field.
The ivy,
The bleachers,
the scoreboard.
Annie looked up and around at the stadium.
She knew it had seen better days.
She knew the netting had not always been up to catch the falling concrete.
She knew if you ended up behind the hole, you might miss half the game.
And she knew that Wrigley Field was the last of dying dreams.
Once it was gone,
of the 8th.
1-5.
The bases were loaded.
Ramirez came up to bat. Strike 1.
Come on, Ramirez, you can do it.
Strike 2.
Let's go, Cubbies. Let's go, Cubbies. Let's go, Cubbies.
The ball went flying straight over right field.
Right over the bleachers.
And right out of the park. Go, Cubbies.
Annie was down, nervous.
She knew he was thinking of one game in particular.
October 14th, 2003.
Annie had been too young to go to the game.
But she clearly remembered her older brother and dad leaving.
The Cubs had 3 games, the Marlins 2. The excitement was unbelievable. The Marlins were to bat a pitch, and it was a hit. Ellie ran to get it, and he would have caught it if it hadn't been for Steve Bartman.
Steve Bartman reached out.
And Steve Bartman snatched the ball right out of Blue's hands.
Any hope for the poor Cubs had gone right out the window.
The
Marlins
went
On.
to
score
8 more.
runs.
To this day, whenever he was angry or upset, he would mutter under his breath, Bartman, Bartman, Bartman.
The other team managed to score a run at the top of the 8th.
There was a runner on third and the batter bunted.
But somehow it ended up right under Dempster's feet.
Dempster tried to do this little hop.
And reached down and grabbed the ball at the same time.
And then he tripped over his own feet.
The ball rolled past him, and by the time it was in someone's hands,
The runner on third had slid home, but the batter was on second.
bottom of the 9th.
5-6, 2 outs.
There was a runner on second. Soto came up to bat.
The pitcher wound up, pulled back in third.
Ball went up and up.
And it right over, and it was going to be a home run.
They were going to do it.
But then a fielder leaped up and caught it.
3 outs.
Game was over.
The Cubs had lost.
The season was over.
Some people called them lovable losers.
Maybe they are.
But you have to stay positive.
I love my Cubbies.
Section 114, row 2, seats 102 and 101.
It doesn't matter to me if they win.
I'm young. I can wait until it's their year.
And you never know.
Maybe next year.